Spring came to the little coastal town with soft wind and bright light. Salt moved through the air, and the sea sounded like a quiet drum. On one of those easy mornings in 2007, Mara Hart packed a lunch for her son, Eli. She cut his sandwich into neat squares because he liked small pieces he could eat fast between games. Eli was 12, thin and quick, with a habit of turning a pencil in his fingers when he had to think. He wore a blue jacket with a small school badge that he had pinned himself. Before he left, he checked his backpack, patted his pockets for the house key, and smiled with a shy tilt of his head. "I'll help at the fair," he said. "I won't be late." Mara kissed the top of his hair and watched him walk down the street, the jacket bright in the pale sun. She breathed out, a long, calm breath, and felt grateful for an ordinary day. The school fair sat on the edge of the field, next to the library. There were folding tables with cupcakes, posters, and paper airplanes. Children ran from a beanbag, tossed to a book corner, and someone played a guitar by the lemonade stand. Eli liked to help more than he liked to play. He stacked paper cups, carried a box of prizes, and handed change to a teacher who was short $1. He worked at the end of the day, too, after most people went home. He stayed to fold chairs and gather lost mittens. The librarian, a gentlewoman in a green cardigan, asked if he could place a box of old bookmarks inside the door. He nodded and did it. Near the library steps, he paused to look at a hand-drawn map from the history booth. He traced a line with his finger, the way he often did when he was stuck on a math problem. It was the last small picture of him that day, a boy in a blue jacket, head bent, pencil spinning slowly in his hand. Late afternoon light turned thin. Mara set 2 plates on the kitchen table and warmed soup. She looked at the clock. Eli knew the rule: call if he was running behind. The phone stayed quiet. She washed an apple and cut it into neat slices like he liked. She checked the time again and went to the porch, listening for his quick feet on the walkway. A bus groaned past at the corner, and a neighbor waved. The light grew softer. Mara called the fair coordinator. "He helped with cleanup," the voice said. "Sweet kid, always so polite." Mara called the library. The librarian remembered his careful hands placing the box by the door. "He stood on the steps a moment," she said. "Then I turned to lock up." The librarian's voice slowed. When I looked again, he was gone. By evening, the town moved together the way small towns do. People met with flashlights at the edge of the field. They walked in lines, feet careful, eyes down. The sky filled with silver and then went black, and the sea spoke louder. Someone printed a photo from the school website, and copies went to shop windows and the radio station. A man who drove the late bus thought he saw a boy in a blue jacket near the hardware store, but he was not sure. A clerk at the corner shop remembered selling 2 sodas to a tall man who paid in coins. The clerk could not say if a boy was with him or not. Everything was soft and unsure, like faces seen through rain. The police organized the search professionally and kindly. They asked questions in a steady voice and wrote everything down. They checked routes and cameras and the old footpath by the bluff. A retired officer named Walt Renner came by the station with coffee. He had worked there for many years and still liked to feel useful. When he heard the name, Eli, he looked at the photo too long and then looked away. He recognized the boy's quiet eyes. He offered to help sort the early tips and make calls to nearby towns. The team thanked him. He stayed until midnight at a spare desk, moving sticky notes into small groups. Seen at fair, library steps, corner shop, coins. Days turned into a week, and the first edge of shock wore down to a low ache. Flyers stayed on. Windows, their corners starting to curl. The radio repeated the same calm notice at the top of each hour. The sea kept moving, not too loud, not too soft, almost like breath. People still searched on their own. A teacher walked the path behind the school and looked under the little bridge. A baker took a long drive along the coast and stopped at every turnout to look and listen. Mara made tea for whoever came by, and she kept her face clear and kind. She showed the blue jacket in a photo, the small school badge, the plastic keychain shaped like a library card. She held the pencil he often spun and said, "He never breaks the tip. He always keeps it sharp." Walt visited Mara one afternoon, with a folder that had the boy's name on it. He sat at the kitchen table and listened more than he spoke. He noticed the second plate still set on the counter, as if dinner could begin any minute. He asked easy questions about small habits. Did Eli like to fix things? Did he talk to strangers? Did he ever take the bus alone? He wrote down her answers and thanked her for trusting him. Before he left, he looked at the porch. The light fixture had a tiny chip in the glass. It turned on as the sky dimmed, and Mara reached up to adjust it so it faced the path. "I want it to be bright," she said. "I want him to see it from the corner." She did not cry. She folded the dish towel and placed it on the counter like a line drawn under a sentence. On the first Sunday after the fair, Mara took a small piece of paper from a notebook and wrote a few lines to her son. She did not know why she chose Sunday. The choice felt gentle, like setting a scarf on a chair so it could wait for later. She wrote, "You helped at the fair. I am proud. I made soup and cut an apple. I left the porch light on." She folded the note and placed it in a shoebox that once held sneakers. On the second Sunday, she wrote again, "Your jacket is washed. Your key is on the hook. I will be here." She did not show the notes to anyone. She did not make any big plans with them. She just kept writing. The box grew heavy with quiet words. Months passed. The fair came and went the next year with a softer voice. People still asked after her at the shop or in the library. The librarian now kept the door open a little longer each day and placed a small basket of pencils near the checkout desk. She thought it might help someone one day. She could not say how. The school badge stayed on the fridge with a magnet shaped like a red apple. Sometimes, when Mara took a plate from the cabinet for dinner, she paused because her hand had reached for two without thinking. She did not scold herself. She set one plate down and returned the other, then turned on the little radio that sat by the window. The announcer read the weather, the fish report, and the community notes. The voice was steady and kind. Walt retired for good, though retired never felt right. He kept a copy of Eli's file in a brown box in his garage along with camping, gear, and a broken lawn chair he wanted to fix. On the lid of the box, he wrote the boy's name, the year, and a promise to check again. He did check. He checked the bus routes up the coast and the dates of fruit harvests, because he had once heard that a boy like Eli might find day work with people who moved from place to place. He checked notices from shelter boards. He called one or two numbers. Every month, never rushing, never pushing, always saying the same calm lines, "I am calling about an old case. I'm not asking much. I'm only asking if anyone new came by in a blue jacket once." Sometimes he said nothing after that, letting the line sit quiet so the person on the other end could think. Most times, there was no match. He would close his notebook, pat the brown box, and say, "All right then, next time." Years layered on years without a loud sound. They came like light rain, soft and constant. Houses changed paint. A shop closed, and a new one opened in its place, selling second-hand books and old tools and friendly mugs with chips on the rim. Children who had folded chairs at the fair grew into young adults. Some moved away, some stayed. New children started at the school and learned the song for the winter program. The sea kept the same slow drum. The porch light at Mara's house still clicked on at dusk. Sometimes she would stand on the front step and hold a mug of tea and listen for a sound that might be the past turning into the present. Then she would go inside, fold a towel once, and write her Sunday note. On Eli's birthdays, Mara placed one candle on a small cupcake and did not sing. She set the cupcake by the window and waited for the candle to go out on its own. She kept the school badge where she could see it without trying. She visited the library sometimes to read the local paper and return a cooking book she had borrowed. The librarian always smiled and did not speak too much. The small basket of pencils stayed by the scanner, ready for anyone who needed to take one. The beeps from the checkout made a light rhythm, like short steps on dry ground. It felt safe. The 14th spring after the fair began like any other. Yellow flowers brightened. The path by the bluff. The radio carried soft music in the morning and baseball scores at night. Walt walked into his garage, opened the brown box, and traced the boy's name with one finger. He did not know why that day felt different. He only knew habits mattered. Habits kept doors open. He wrote down 2 new numbers to try and set the notebook on his passenger seat. In another part of town, the second-hand shop's doorbell chimed as boxes came in from a house that had been cleared after a move. The owner lifted out a tin of screws, a jar of buttons, and a small ledger bound in plain cardboard. Coffee stains marked the corners. The pages were filled with dates, towns, and tiny notes: day work, repairs, fruit run, cash. On some lines, 2 simple letters repeated like a Quiyamara. Rosa Alvarez opened her shop a little before 9. She liked the quiet time when the lights clicked on and the small bell over the door made its soft ring. The second-hand store sat on the corner near the bakery, and it always smelled faintly of old paper and lemon cleaner. That morning, a volunteer brought 3 cardboard boxes from a house that had been cleared after a move. The boxes were labeled tools, books, and misc. Rosa thanked the volunteer, signed the slip, and slid the boxes behind the counter so she could sort them before customers came in. She started with the box marked tools. Inside were a tin of screws, a tape measure with worn numbers, 2 paintbrushes, a jar of buttons for no clear reason, and a small ledger bound in plain cardboard. The ledger looked like the kind used by someone who counts cash at the end of the day. It had coffee stains in both corners and a thin pencil tucked into the spiral. Rosa opened it gently. The first page had a date from long ago and a list of a town, a small job, and an amount of money. The handwriting was careful and blocky. The next page showed the same pattern: date, place, job, amount. She turned a few more pages. The places changed. The jobs were short and simple: day work, repairs, fruit run, cash. On the right edge of many lines, 2 letters appeared again and again like a quiet pattern. E.H. Rosa did not rush. She kept a stool behind the counter for times like this. She sat and turned pages slowly. The ledger ran across many years. The first date near the front matched the year she remembered from an old flyer that had once hung in the library. She did not say the name out loud. She had lived in this town long enough to know that stories sit in the air and handling them requires care. She checked the last pages. The dates there were close to today. One entry from only 6 weeks ago listed a farm by its full name and a payday. She placed her finger on that line and felt her heart pick up and then steady again. A customer came, in for a mug with a chip. Rosa smiled, rang up the sale, and wrapped the mug in paper. When the doorbell chimed again, she set the ledger under the counter on a clean cloth. She did not want it to wander or to gather more dust. After the morning rush, she took a damp cloth and wiped the cover carefully. She used the edge of the cloth to clean the coffee stain without making it spread. The pencil fell out and rolled to the register. She picked it up. The tip was sharp. By noon, the sun lit the front display where she kept a few books with bright covers. Rosa brought the ledger to a small table near the window. She loved neat records. In her shop, everything had a tag, even if it cost $1. She opened to the middle and began to read in order. Some lines had little notes in the margin: bus fare 5, lunch 4, paid late. Once someone had drawn a tiny sketch of a boy's face, just a few lines for eyes and a mouth, and written one word beneath it: quiet. The drawing was faint and small, as if the person who drew it wanted to keep the page neat but could not help, adding what they saw. Rosa looked up at the map on the wall. The shop kept a county map with small pins for fun. She stood and placed one pin on the first town in the ledger, then another on the next town. Soon a line of pins ran up the side of the map and then back down in wide loops. She stepped back and thought about the seasons. Fruit picking happened in late summer here and earlier in warmer places. Repairs happened in many months. The pattern felt like the road. It felt like someone moving from job to job with a steady pace and not much rest. She took out her phone and opened the local community group online. She knew the group well. It had lost pets, bake sale notices, gentle advice, and sometimes too much talk. Rosa had posted there before when the shop needed volunteers, or when she found a class ring in a coat pocket. She also knew that some things should not be shared out loud. Names can bring heat. Pictures can bring chaos. She decided on a careful plan. She took 3 photos of the ledger that showed the general look of the pages, but not full names, not full dates, and not the last lines. She made sure the 2 letters on the side were not clear in the photos. Then she wrote, "Found a work ledger in a tools donation. It lists towns, small jobs, and cash over many years. If this seems familiar to anyone or could help someone, please message me directly. I will handle with care." The post went up in the early afternoon. She set her phone face down so she would not check it every second. She returned to the counter, greeted customers, and sold a lamp with a shade that leaned a little. The bell over the door rang on and off. She made change. She wrapped a frame with brown paper. Every now and then she looked at the ledger and touched its edge like it was a living thing that needed calm hands. Her phone buzzed twice and then again. Most messages were kind and simple. So thoughtful. Could it be a travel log? Please be careful. One message stood out. It was short. "Hi, Rosa. This is Walt Renner. Retired from the station. Could I stop by near closing? I think I should take a look. I'll explain why when I arrive." She knew his name. Many people did. He had a soft voice, and when he spoke at town meetings, he talked as if every person in the room mattered. She wrote back, "Yes. 5 o'clock?" At 5 o'clock, the sun lowered and made the map glow in a square of light. Walt stepped in and removed his cap. He did not bring a badge. He did not carry a file. He carried a small notebook and a pen. Rosa showed him the ledger without saying much. He listened to her explain how she found it and where. He asked if he could wash his hands before touching the pages, and she liked him more for that. He dried his hands on a paper towel, sat at the small table, and opened to the middle, then the back. He did not rush either. He read with his eyes, and his hands still. He looked at the 2 letters on the side of many lines, and at the tiny sketch and the word under it. He traced the pins on the map with his eyes and nodded once, as if a line he had drawn in his head years ago had become visible. "Rosa," he said, "thank you for not posting more. Thank you for waiting." He turned a page and stopped at the last complete line. He put his finger near the farm's name. "This place," he said, and he said it like a place he could drive to without a map. "It's not far." Rosa felt a small wave move through the room and settle. "What do we do?" she asked. "Because I do not want to do the wrong thing. I can't be the one who brings trouble. I want to help, but I want to be careful." Walt smiled with his eyes more than his mouth. "We call someone who knows how to reach people in a calm way," he said. He took a card from his notebook. "Her name is Lila. She is a community liaison and worker advocate. She knows farms. She knows how to ask questions without making anyone feel unsafe." Rosa agreed at once. She had seen trouble happen when people hurried. She brewed tea while Walt made the call on speaker. Lila answered on the second ring. Her voice was steady. Walt gave her the short version. He did not say any names. He described the ledger, the dates, the pattern of towns, and the last entry, with the farm's full name and recent date. Lila asked if she could come by in the morning to see the pages. She also asked if Rosa could write down how the ledger arrived and who brought the boxes. Not to blame anyone, just to keep a clear record. "We will keep this quiet," Lila said. "No big posts, no surprises. If there is someone tied to this, we will offer support first." Rosa made a log with the time, the date, the name of the volunteer, and how the boxes were labeled. She kept her handwriting neat. She placed the ledger in a large zip bag and set it on the highest shelf she had. She turned the shop sign to "Closed" and watched Walt stand and look at the map once more. He did not touch the pins. He only stood very still for a long breath. 14 years, he said softly, not to anyone in particular. And a plain little book shows up like it never left the road. That evening, Walt went home to his garage. He pulled out the brown box with the name and the year written on the lid. He opened his old notebook where he had written bus routes, harvest times, and the names of towns that show up on day labor boards. He did not need to see the ledger again to remember the order of places near the end. He took a pencil and drew a simple line on a sheet of paper. The county, the farm road, the small store with the bright red sign near the turn. He mapped the last 6 weeks as if he were drawing footsteps on a sidewalk. At the bottom of the page, he wrote the farm's name the way it had appeared. He underlined the payday date and wrote 6 weeks next to it. Then he closed his notebook gently and put it beside his keys. Rosa cleaned her counter and flipped the sign on the door to face the street in the morning direction. She turned off the lights except for a small lamp near the books. She stood by the window and looked at the map one more time. The pins caught the last light and made small points, like stars. She did not think about luck. She thought about the way ordinary objects can carry truth. A chipped mug can remind someone of a kitchen. A library card keychain can bring back a day. A ledger can draw a path. In a small house across town, Mara sat at her table with the shoebox open. She did not know about the ledger. She did not know about the call. She wrote her Sunday note even though it was not Sunday. "I bought apples," she wrote. "The porch light still works." The sea was calm. She folded the paper, placed it on top of the others, and closed the lid. She turned on the porch light and listened to the sound it made, a tiny click. She breathed in and out and let the evening settle like a... The road to the farm curved through low hills and then opened into long rows of green. Lila drove with both hands steady on the wheel. Walt sat in the passenger seat with his small notebook closed. He did not flip it open once on the drive. He watched fence posts pass, one by one, and counted them like quiet steps. Behind them, the town grew small. Ahead, the fields looked calm and busy at the same time. People in hats moved slowly among the plants. A tractor hummed. A dog slept under the shade of a tall water tank. They did not go alone. Lila had called a worker advocate the farm trusted, a man named Tomas. He met them at the gate and raised a hand in welcome. He knew the owner, the crew leads, and the way the day moved out there. He walked them past a sign that reminded everyone to wash hands and drink water. He nodded to a woman setting out a crate of oranges and a stack of paper, cups. "We come with respect," Tomas said softly. "We ask simple questions. We do not make trouble for people who are working. That is the rule." The farm office was a small room with a fan that clicked as it turned and a bulletin board covered in papers. There were maps of the fields, a safety poster, and a photo from the last harvest festival. In the picture, the crew wore bright shirts and stood in 2 loose rows. Some smiled, some looked away. Lila leaned closer. Near the back row, a tall young man stood slightly apart, his eyes low. A paper tag on his jacket was half-turned, but two letters showed on the edge like a secret that did not want to hide. E.H. Lila did not point. She looked for patterns, not proof. She asked the office manager for permission to review sign-in sheets from the last 2 months. The manager agreed after Tomas explained the reason with care. They sat at a side table. Lila wore cotton gloves so she would not smudge anything. Walt kept his hands folded. The sign-in sheets listed first names only. Then, in a folder labeled Safety, they found a form. Crew members had copied a sentence by hand to show they had read the rules about ladders and sun hats and water. On the last page, a neat, plain signature held 2 words. Eli H. No one in the office spoke for a long moment. The room kept its small sounds. The fan click, a pen rolling and stopping, a chair leg rubbing the floor. Lila breathed out slowly. "He worked here recently," she said, like she was laying a small stone on a path. "He signed this, which means he read the page. It also means someone told him he mattered enough to be safe." The manager looked at Tomas and then at the papers. "He stayed quiet," she said. "Came early, left on time, fixed the edge of a broken crate without being asked, drank hot tea," she added, almost with surprise. "Most choose cold water. He had a thermos from some bus company. He never asked for much." "Is he here today?" Lila asked. Her voice held no demand. It was a simple question, like asking the time. The manager shook her head. "He has not come for a week. Before that, he worked steady for 3 weeks. He said he might move on to the packing shed up north when the work started there. He did not say more." Tomas asked if anyone had a phone number for him. The manager looked through a drawer of index cards with rubber bands around them. She found a card with a first name, an initial, and a number written in careful block letters. She set it on the table. "He wrote this," she said. "But sometimes the numbers change. People buy new phones, or they share them." Lila took out her phone and placed it on the table. "With your permission," she said to Walt and the manager, "I will make the first call here. If the person who answers is not him, I will not say names. If it is him, I will ask if he is open to a calm visit. No pressure. His choice." No one moved while the phone rang. It rang 4 times, then a 5th. A voice answered. It was a quiet voice with careful words. Lila gave her name and said she was with a worker advocate. She said she had a simple question about a farm in the county and a safety form from a few weeks ago. She asked if this was a good time to talk. The voice did not speak for a breath, then said, "It is all right to talk a little." They did not use the name first. Lila asked small questions that had answers like yes or no. Did he remember the office with the fan that clicked? Yes. Did he remember the safety page? Yes. Did he remember a crew lead named Marta who carried a bright scarf? Yes. "Sometimes I fix crates," the voice said on its own, as if he wanted to add one small truth that belonged to him. Lila thanked him. She asked if he would be open to a short visit somewhere quiet and neutral, like the picnic table near the small shed by the east field. "We will come with the advocate," she said. "We will stay on the ground you pick. We will leave when you say." There was a pause. Then the voice said, "East table is fine. 10 minutes." The call ended with a soft click. Lila looked at Walt and Tomas. Her eyes showed relief and caution at the same time. "Let's walk," she said. The picnic table by the east field looked out over rows of low plants and a line of trees. The table had initials carved into it from many seasons. A worker set down a crate nearby and nodded, then kept walking. The air smelled like earth and leaves. After a short wait, a tall young man stepped from the path between rows. He wore a plain hat and a jacket he had mended on one sleeve. He held a thermos. He stopped a few steps away. the way someone stops near a door to see if they are welcome to enter. Lila greeted him. Walt nodded. Tomas stayed a little behind, where he could help if needed but would not crowd the space. The young man did not sit. Lila did not ask him to. She introduced herself again and said she had seen a safety form with his handwriting. She said they had found a small ledger in town that listed places and jobs over many years and that it might connect to him. She did not say who he was. She did not say he needed to remember. She offered him the shape of a story and let him decide if he wanted to stand inside it. He took off his hat for a moment and smoothed his hair, then put the hat back on. He looked at the table, not at their faces. Ledger, he said softly, testing the word like a coin. Small book, cardboard cover, coffee marks. His hand held the thermos tighter. There were 2 letters written on the side of many lines, Lila said slowly. The same 2 letters over and over. He nodded once. To keep track, he said, so he could pay me, so I could prove I worked when someone asked. He lifted the thermos and took a small drink. He set it down with care. 2 letters are mine. Walt found his voice, quiet and steady. We do not need to ask for a full name unless you want to share it, he said. If you choose to keep that to yourself today, we will still be here. We can still help. We can still listen. The young man looked past them toward the line of trees. Then he looked at the earth near his boots. My name, he said, is Eli. I use the H, and not the rest because it felt safe. He did not rush through the word. He held it up and turned it like a small, fragile cup. Walt did not move. Lila did not move. The field hummed with quiet work far away. I want to say one place to see if it fits, Lila said. A library with steps. A boy who held a pencil and turned it in his fingers when he had to think. A mother who wrote a note each Sunday and kept them in a box. At the word library, he closed his eyes. He opened them again and looked at the sky. His breath changed. He tilted his head the way a person does when a sound from far away arrives close. Library steps, he repeated. The words were not a question. They were a stone placed on another stone. He put his hand on the picnic table and felt the grooves there. He stood like that for a long minute. The wind moved through the rows and made a soft rushing sound, like a page turned by a careful hand. I left with a man who fixed things, he said at last. He was not cruel, he moved a lot. He liked quiet workers who never caused trouble and could count change. He called me kid, even when I was not a kid anymore. I did not know how to go back after the first week turned into a month and then longer. The book kept the order of days when I could not keep the order in my head. Places, jobs, cash, sometimes a bus number, sometimes a small drawing because I did not want to forget a face. He paused. Once, a small face. He added almost to himself. I drew it too small. Lila said, You were a boy, and you did your best to survive the days. You do not need to explain more than you want. She asked if he needed water or a break. He shook his head and touched the thermos again, a small anchor. Why now? He asked. Why today? He looked at Walt like a person looks at a clock that has started to work again. Because a shop owner with careful hands found a plain book, Walt said. Because she posted with caution. Because a worker advocate knows this farm and keeps trust with people. Because you wrote your initials and your letters look like the ones on a school form from long ago. Because small things stayed in place and made a line that goes from then to now. Eli nodded. The word now landed between them like a small bell. He did not rush to pick it up. We have a simple offer, Lila said. We can call one person. We can use a first name only. We can say we are with you. If you want silence today, we will keep it. If you want to wait for a day or a week, we will wait. You do not owe anyone speed. You only get to choose a pace that feels safe to you." Eli did not answer right away. He looked at the path between the rows where his boots had made a shape that morning. He looked at his hands, which were strong and clean. He looked at the table with its carved letters. Then he said, "If she still wants to hear my voice, I can try a call. One person, no crowd, no lights. I can try." Morning light washed the east field in a soft glow. The picnic table looked the same as yesterday, with carved letters from past seasons and a little crack along one edge. Lila arrived first and wiped the table with a clean cloth. She set a small notebook and a quiet promise on the wood. This would be slow, gentle, and honest. Walt parked nearby and walked over with a calm step. He kept his small notebook in his pocket and his hands still. Tomas waited at a distance so he could help if needed, and yet keep the space open. Eli came along the side path with his hat low and his thermos in his hand. He took the same place as before, a few steps from the table, where he could see far, across the rows. He nodded to each person and took a breath that looked like he was counting to 3 inside himself. Lila greeted him and asked if this still felt like the right spot. He said yes. The wind in the leaves sounded like a kind, steady fan. Lila explained the plan in simple words. First, a short phone call, no names until he wanted to say them. If the call felt too big, they would stop. If it felt okay, they would ask if a video call could happen later in a safe place. She said he could hold the thermos the whole time. He could step away at any second and nobody would follow. "You are in control," she said. Eli nodded and placed the thermos on the table so his hand could find it without looking. Walt dialed a number very carefully. He had written it on a white card last night and checked it 3 times. He placed the phone on the table, on speaker, and leaned back. So the table belonged to Eli. The ring sounded once, twice, 3 times. On the 4th ring, a quiet, "Hello?" came through. It was a voice that had learned how to speak softly to keep from breaking. Eli did not say a name. He said, "It's me." Then he waited. On the other end, there was only a breath, and then the sound of a chair moving. "Me who?" the voice asked, but the words were not sharp. They were careful and full of hope. Eli looked at the rows and said, "Library steps." Just that. He let the words sit there like a small stone, placed in a familiar hand. The voice made a soft sound that could have been a laugh or a sob, and then grew steady. "I am here," Mara said. "I never left." Lila reached out and set a pencil on the table, not for writing, but so Eli could turn it in his fingers if he needed to. He took it without thinking and rolled it gently, the same old habit. "I have a small scar near my eyebrow," he said, "from the day the ladder slipped in the garage when I was 10. You said the ladder was brave because it tried to help me reach the top shelf." Mara laughed this time, a clear, small sound. "I did say that," she replied. "You tilt your head when you think. You cut your sandwiches into squares. I still do that." They did not rush. They exchanged tiny, ordinary markers of a life. The chip on the porch light, the squeak on the second step, the basket of pencils the librarian put by the scanner. Walt listened with his eyes on the ground, so the call could be theirs. Tomas faced the field. Lila watched Eli's hand and the pencil and kept an easy rhythm. One question, a pause, a breath, room to stop. When the call ended, nobody moved for a moment. Eli set the pencil next to the thermos and pressed his palm flat on the table. "I can try a video call," he said. "Not here. Maybe at the community room by the library. It feels right." Lila agreed at once. The small second room at the library had a door that shut, a sign that could say "in use" and soft lighting. The librarian would help and keep everything quiet. That afternoon, they met at the library. The librarian placed a small basket of pencils on the table and a card that read, Please knock softly. She smiled at Eli without staring and then closed the door. Lila set a tablet in the middle, angled so the image would be clear but not too close. Walt sat a little to the side, present but not in the center. Eli touched the table once, then nodded. Lila tapped the screen. Mara's face appeared with gentle light behind her. She had placed the camera so only a corner of the kitchen showed. A tea mug, a plant, and the edge of the fridge with the apple magnet. She lifted her hand but kept it at shoulder height, as if to say hello without reaching through the screen. Eli looked at her and then, without warning, turned the pencil slowly. He did not speak for several seconds. She let the silence be warm. "You still have the apple magnet," he said, "and the mug with the small crack that never grows." She smiled. "Yes, I learned to pour tea on the other side." She leaned closer, not too close. "I can see your eyebrow," she said, and her voice softened. "The little scar is there." Eli nodded. He took off his hat so the light would catch the line. "I kept it," he said, almost like a joke. "It would not leave." They both laughed, and the sound eased a tight place in the room. They spoke about small things first: soup, apples, the color of the sea that morning. Then Lila explained the next steps. She used simple terms. "There are identity steps that help protect you," she said. "We can do them slowly. We can compare old school papers and photos. There are records that belong to you. We can ask a calm, trained person to help put the pieces in order. We can keep news out of it. No reporters, no noise." Mara nodded. "Whatever keeps him safe," she said. Eli listened, eyes thoughtful, pencil steady. "I want to do it," he said, "but with breaks." Lila said, "We will work in small pieces. You call the pace." Over the next few days, small pieces came together. Walt brought his brown box to the station and sat with a younger officer who treated the file with respect. They compared the simple details that matter: height then and height now, a childhood scar, a dentist's note about a baby tooth that never fell out until a certain month. The dates matched in a quiet way that felt solid. No one pushed for speed. Every paper was copied and placed in manila envelopes with Eli's chosen name on the tab. The envelopes went into a folder he could hold with both hands. "It belongs to you," Lila told him. "Not the system. You." Rosa scanned the ledger. At the shop, one page at a time, the way a person turns a record of a life into something safe to share with helpers. She kept the original in a zip bag on her highest shelf. She printed a copy for Walt and one for Lila. She did not print extra. She did not post photos. She called the section Work Path on a little sticky note and placed it on top. When Eli stopped by after hours, she asked if he wanted to see the first pages. He stood at the counter and placed one fingertip on the faint sketch of a boy's face and the word "quiet" written under it. "I remember the person who drew it," he said. "He liked straight lines. He liked rules. He also liked quiet." He did not add more. Rosa nodded and gave him a small, chipped mug to hold while they stood in the calm light. Lila set up a short, private meeting with a caseworker who specialized in careful reunions. They met in a conference room with a round table, 2 tea mugs, and a window that looked at a tree. The caseworker spoke in a friendly, everyday style. She asked about sleep, about food, about work hours, about what makes a day feel safe. She gave Eli a small card with times he could call and another card for Mara. "You can both lean on us," she said. "You do not have to be brave all the time." The in-person reunion came next, but it did not happen on a front step in a rush. It happened in the library's small room, where a person can sit with their hands folded and breathe. Mara arrived early and placed 2 tea bags in paper cups. She sat with her hands on her knees and looked at the "knock softly" card like it could tell her what to do. Eli walked in with Lila and Walt. He took off his hat and held a pencil because the pencil gave his hands a job while his heart learned a new beat. He sat, and she sat. They did not stand up and rush to close the space. They let their eyes do the work first. She noticed his shoulders a little stronger. He noticed a gray strand in her hair that looked good with her smile. She reached out her hand halfway. He reached his hand halfway. They touched fingers. It was enough. They spoke in short pieces. He told her about hot tea at a farm and a thermos with a bus logo. She told him about the radio and the basket of pencils the librarian kept by the scanner. He told her about the feeling of getting paid cash and writing it down so he would not forget. She told him about the shoebox and the Sunday notes. When she said, "Shoebox," he looked at the table and then at the door, like he could see a path from here to there. "I want to read them," he said softly. "Not all at once. One each evening, in order." Her eyes filled, then cleared. "Yes," she said. "One each evening." Before he went to the house, they made one more plan. He would not stay the first night. He would visit the porch at dusk, see the light come on, and place his backpack by the door for a minute. He would then sleep at a calm place the caseworker arranged, where a person sits at a desk at night and keeps watch, not like a guard, but like a neighbor who cares. Lila said this was a good plan. Mara agreed. "We will be kind to time," she said. "We will not run ahead of it." At dusk, they drove the quiet street with the big trees. The porch light clicked on with its tiny sound. Eli stood on the first step and heard the squeak on the second without stepping there. He touched the wooden rail that he had sanded once when he was small. He set his backpack on the porch next to the mat with the simple pattern. He did not knock. He did not go in. Mara opened the door anyway and stood in the frame, not blocking the light, not pulling him forward. They looked at each other in the real air without his backpack, held it to his chest for a second, and then placed it. The second evening, Eli sat at the kitchen table with the shoebox between him and Mara. The window was open a little, and the smell of the sea moved in and out like a slow breath. He held the next note as if it were a small leaf. "Your jacket is washed. Your key is on the hook. I will be here," he read, his voice steady. He placed the paper back in order and closed his hand over the lid for a moment. He still slept at the calm place the caseworker arranged, but he came each evening at the same time. They kept the plan simple. One note, one cup of tea, one small story about the day. They did not reach for big words. They let the ordinary do the work. In the mornings, he tried easy, familiar things. He went with Tomas to the farm for 2 short shifts, the kind where you can leave if your chest feels tight. He repaired a crate and oiled a squeaky hinge. On another day, he walked to the library and asked if he could help with small fixes. The librarian showed him a wobbly chair and a box of dull pencils. He set the chair right with patient hands and took the time to sharpen every pencil. The small room still had the knock softly card. He smiled at that card like it was an old friend. He learned the rhythm of the town again. The bakery smell at 7, the radio's weather at noon, the long shade that fell across the field in late afternoon. The ledger finished its quiet journey from paper to tool. Lila and Walt sat at a table and traced its path with calm eyes. They used it to build a checklist for safe outreach. It had simple lines. Ask with respect. Go with a trusted advocate. Choose a place the person prefers. Bring water. Bring patience. No names until invited. No media. Let them decide the pace. Offer support, not pressure. Leave the door open. They printed the checklist on one page and kept it in a plain folder. Lila brought it to a small training for nearby farm managers and community volunteers. She did not tell a dramatic story. She pointed to the plain page and said, "This works because it is gentle." Walt returned to a room he knew well and spoke to volunteers who were new to the work. He did not make a speech. He set the copied ledger on the table and turned pages the way a person turns a family album. He showed how the towns followed seasons. He showed where a bus number appeared in the margin like a thread. He traced the tiny sketch of a boy's face and the word quiet, and people in the room did not move for a second. Then he lifted a manila envelope with Eli's chosen name on the tab and said, "Everything we touch should go back to the person it belongs to." He left the room with his shoulders a little lighter. The brown box in his garage later got a small sticker on the lid that said, "Checked again, kept alive." Rosa turned a corner of her shop into the found items space. It had a soft sign with a hand-drawn key and a notebook where people could write, "This looks like mine," or "I might know who needs this," without posting anything online. A girl found her grandmother's brooch tucked in a scarf and cried in a quiet, happy way that made everyone smile without making noise. A man pointed to an old sketchbook and said, "That is my line." And Rosa asked calm questions, then placed the book in his hands. She pinned a small card near the ledger's shelf that read, "If you find something that looks like more than a thing, like a life, tell me. We will move slowly." The map on her wall kept its pins. There was a new pin near the east field, not to mark a rescue but to mark a choice, a place where someone stood and spoke. Eli stayed nearby. He took a few shifts at the packing shed up north and came back at week's end to read another note. He helped the librarian set up a cart for the fair's book corner. He made sure the folding chairs on the school field locked into place and would not pinch small fingers. He did not want a ceremony. He did not stand on a stage. He liked moving in a line with other people and doing work that left the world a little more in order than he found it. The librarian kept a tiny repair log and wrote E.H. chair, pencils, cartwheel. When she closed the book at night, the library made its soft beeps, and Eli felt the sound settle in his chest like a clock finding the right time. The Sunday notes carried their own weather. Some were 4 lines, some were 2. One said, "I heard your laugh in the grocery aisle," and turned my head, but it was a radio. Another said, "The fish report says good luck at dawn. I left the porch light on anyway." One note described a birthday cupcake with a single candle that went out on its own. When that one came, Eli smiled at the flame in his mind and looked at the real porch light with a new kind of calm. Some evenings he asked questions. What song did we learn for the winter program? Which tree first turned yellow on the bluff? Mara answered in small stories that fit the questions exactly. Not more, not less. The box grew lighter because the weight was shared. The caseworker helped finish the steady work of records. Eli chose to use his full name on his new card. He kept his initials for the places where they felt right. He opened a bank account and placed his first deposit with a neat signature. The teller did not stare. The teller asked if he wanted paper, statements, or email, and he chose paper. He took a photo for a simple ID and chose the one where he turned his head just a little, the way he always did when he thought. The ledger's copy, Work Path, in Rosa's careful hand, helped him list past work so future work would be fair. He asked Lila if it would be right to keep one original page. Lila said, "If the person who donated the box agrees, yes." Rosa asked the donor. The answer came back kind and clear. Let it live where it matters most. They framed the page with the faint pencil sketch and the word quiet. The frame was simple wood with a clean pane. Eli and Mara hung it on the wall near the door where the porch light switch sat. Under the frame, they placed a small shelf for a pencil and a spare key. The first night the frame was up, Eli touched the glass gently and did not feel trapped by the past. He felt counted. "It is not a record of wandering anymore," he said. "It is a map that shows how to get here." Mara nodded and lifted the switch. She looked at him to ask without words. He answered without words, too. She flipped the porch light off. and for the first time in many years, the night arrived as a friend, not a worry. There were still days with tightness. Some mornings, a sound would bring back a place he could not name, and his hands would go quiet. On those days, Lila's simple tools helped. Hold a pencil, take one sip of tea, name 5 things you can see, 4 you can touch, 3 you can hear, 2 you can smell, 1 you can taste. He liked the taste part best because it often meant a slice of apple. He joined a small group that met in the community room once a week. People there spoke slowly. Sometimes he only listened. The caseworker said listening is also a kind of brave, and he took that as a good rule. The town adjusted its steps to meet him without crowding him. Tomas set aside time for a know your pay talk at the farm. He used the ledger's pattern to show how a person can keep a record that helps them claim what is theirs. The manager updated the safety forms so they were clear and in 2 languages. A new worker took a pencil from the basket and smiled at the sharpness. "Someone keeps these ready," she said, and the librarian smiled without saying who. Walt began a monthly coffee circle for people who wanted to help but did not know how. He showed them the checklist and reminded them that kindness is a method, not just a feeling. Eli did not rush to decide where to live forever. He stayed some nights at Mara's, some nights at his small place where the caseworker first set him up. He liked the sound of the sea from one window and the quiet of the side street from the other. He kept both keys on the little shelf under the frame and chose which one to take in the morning like a person chooses a hat. He added his own habit to the Sunday ritual. On Sunday afternoons, after reading one of Mara's notes, he wrote a small reply on a new card. "Today I fixed a wheel. I sharpened 12 pencils. I sat on the library steps and counted 5 clouds." He placed his replies in a second box. 2 boxes on the same shelf, side by side, felt like a door that opens both ways. Spring returned with its clear light and its clean wind. The school fair came back, and Eli stood off to the side the way he liked, ready to carry a box or hold a sign. A boy traced a line on a hand-drawn map the way Eli once had, and Eli saw the small turn of a pencil and smiled. He folded chairs. At the end, without being asked, he wiped a table with a cloth someone handed him. He walked home down the street, where the trees cast gentle shade. At the porch, he touched the frame, set his key on the shelf, and stood with his hand near the switch. He waited. Not because he was unsure, but because he wanted to feel the moment like a page that deserves to be turned slowly. At Rosa's shop, the bell over the door made its soft ring. A new card on the found items shelf read, "What you found may be a path. Come tell me. We will walk it slowly." The map on the wall kept its stars of pins. People pointed to places not to gossip, but to remember how far ordinary kindness can travel. Walt's brown box in the garage stayed on its shelf, but he no longer touched the lid every time he walked by. He knew what was inside, and he knew the line from that box already reached a door with a frame on the wall and 2 small shelves beneath. Some nights, Mara and Eli sat in easy silence. The radio read the weather, then the fish report, then the community notes. She washed 2 plates and set them on the rack, and the second plate felt like a simple, happy math.